Okay.
Hi, this is Warren Whitlock from Distributed Conversations, and with me today is Douglas Horn of Telos fame. You're not a founder, you're one of the founders, you're one of the people, and you guys are mining and building stuff and just like very impressive. Not to disclose a brag, I hold a little tiny bit of Telos myself, and I'm watching as it's doing very well right now. But the whole idea of having a crypto and holding some of it as it rises in price seems like archaic to me compared to what we're going to do in the future. When we're really going to start making things happen and the smart contracts are really going to make a difference in the world. So hopefully that's what we're here to talk about today.
Oh,
First of all, am I correct in that, Douglas?
I think you are, Warren. DeFi is already changing things, and Telos is about to launch the fastest, cheapest, highest capacity DeFi platform, most decentralized, greenest. a lot of good reasons to try and use it, and people are excited about that, and I'm excited about it. So it'll open up the benefits of DeFi and the decentralized. Right. I like to think of it as democratized finance, because it takes the central parties out and all the banks and all those guys and lets people manage it themselves. And we're going to make it cheap enough that people can do it. They don't have to already be millionaires to do it, because they don't have to pay $100, $1,000 fees and on transactions in order to make money. They can do like a penny or less.
Making a way for banks to make money doesn't seem like something I care about. But making a way that the rest of us can make money, that's great. And to reiterate,
we remove the bank. We remove the bank.
Right. There is the idea of you can't trust fiat money and it may crash and blah, 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 all of that. Good reason to say, hold on to some Bitcoin because that's not going to go anywhere, and it's going to go up. And then, of course, when I talk to a smart person about it who's not in Bitcoin, they're asking what to me seems the obvious question. Well, does it just keep going up forever? Is it some kind of a Ponzi scheme? And of course not. At some point, just like gold or real estate or anything, there has to be maybe some growth, but it's steady, and it's not a speculative thing like it is now. Same with Telos.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, all of those will equalize to their actual utility value. Right now, it's speculative value, but what the investment case for that is, and I'm not an investor or financial investor. I'm just a guy who really likes doing stuff on blockchain. But the idea is, look, this will become, if not the entire, a core of the entire financial system, which I think it eventually will, replace the old legacy financial system because it's more efficient. But at the very least, it's already happening. It's going to become a one of the pillars of finance, and I think it'll just become that more and more. It's almost unstoppable. It's not just Bitcoin; it's the whole ecosystem. Telos actually fits in extremely well with Bitcoin being a store of value, but a terrible payment platform, and Telos being a great payment platform, the only place that you can send one Satoshi or one way, and because there's no transaction fees on native Telos, you don't have to pay 5 Satoshis to send or 100 to send 1 Satoshi, right? It's essentially free. So nobody else has that, and we're even actually going to be using a Satoshi token that we're developing, which is basically the same as a pegged Bitcoin token, but has a built-in method where you can go back and forth between Satoshis and BTC without having to even use an exchange or an AMM. It's just built into the token. So that allows people to use it as a daily payment platform use Sats as a daily payment platform and not have to and it works with what's called the whole number bias for humans, which is basically it's much easier to say 100 Sats than it is to say 0.0000001 Bitcoin, right?
And of course, because of the transaction fees and the time it takes to do a transaction, I've been saying for years that we're not going to see somebody stopping by the 7-Eleven to buy a Squirpy with their Bitcoin. You don't
No,
do that
but
with a gold
Telos half
bar.
second, man.
It does,
You
yeah,
get a
it
half
doesn't
second
mean,
and no cost.
right. But yeah, and the reason I use a debit card at the 7-Eleven is that it is quicker than pulling out cash and keeping track. Do I have cash in my wallet and going to an ATM? And that makes sense. And it's not because I think I'm going to get a better deal on one thing or another. It becomes part of how I live. And I think that's where we're going with all of DeFi is like, and that, if you think back, like where did the corporations come from? People got together and they formed corporations for shipping. If a boat sinks, it can kill the company. But if you form a corporation for each ship, then it spreads the risk. And, that led to insurance and other crazy things that are in our traditional financial system today. But hey, at the time, what a breakthrough. We couldn't have gone anywhere without that kind of cooperation. We were limited to how many ships at sea, et cetera. And the same thing when you start talking about having money, paper money, coins, whatever. You can't carry around a bunch of seashells and gold bars.
Right. So you have checks and other instruments. Yeah, it's the whole financial system. Like pretty much everything is an evolutionary process, and evolutionary processes are usually not any kind of steady state. Instead, there's a leap forward, and then everything kind of adjusts to it, and there's another leap forward, and everything kind of adjusts to it. And we are at the cusp on this. Right. I mean, it's already technically happened. We are in the very midst of the next great leap forward in all finance, and it just happens to tie together other things as well, like perfect notarization, all these things. So being able to do that at a half a second without the congestion and with no fee or essentially no fee means that it brings the whole world in, and it makes it much more useful compared to something that takes 15 seconds or 10 minutes or
and so somebody if anybody's watching this and listening wondering about how does this work, you want to see the monetary world from the start. Read the Bitcoin Standard, a must for anybody interested in this. And you see that every time there is a change, there are people who greatly benefit in the midst of the change. The change makes the world better, but while doing it, there's some losers and there's a lot of winners. The guy who figures out that he can go to the other side of the island and get more shells is suddenly rich. And when he dumps them on the market, it changes the market for what you can buy with seashells. And it's always been like that. Some of the mess we're in right now is smoke and mirrors taking care of the fact that we left the gold standard 50 years ago.
Certainly the inflation. Yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need to be on a gold standard, but the runaway inflation and therefore the deflationary pressure on the U.S. dollar and all currencies is ridiculous. I would say it's not, but so I would use like a little bit of a different metaphor though than the shell guy, right? Sure, the shell guy had an innovation, right, which or a realization. He had a realization that he could work the current system by going and getting shells from somewhere else. But that's not what's happening in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Telos. What's happening there is we're actually, like guys like you and I, we got in early, but we didn't. But some people get in early and they don't do anything but hold or buy or sell. That's fine because we need those too. That's actually why we say everyone involved in Telos right now is a founder, and I'm not the founder. I'm one of the many founders because it really takes a large group of people to make a worthwhile network. I mean, that's the value of a network. And so there's many roles all the way from the big picture vision to coding something to marketing to just buying and holding or selling or whatever, right? So all that's important. But the people who are doing that are supporting the growth. They're actually, it's not like they're going and finding a flaw in the system. They're helping the system grow. They're helping they're helping find better kinds of shells or whatever, right? It does, the metaphor kind of breaks down. But what everybody involved in crypto right now is doing is contributing in some way, large or small, to the growth of crypto and its ability to take over, to take over some of the roles of traditional finance that are unfair, wasteful, and opaque. So we're actually building.
I'm going to write down this note for a later tweet that Douglas.
Don't ask Doug questions.
Says that I'm a Telos founder. So,
you are a Telos founder.
Yeah.
I look, people have like say, well, is that some gimmick or something? I'm like, no, I totally believe that. I mean, as the person who got the ball rolling, I could not have gotten even that first step done I could, even before the first step, I was taking a lot of ideas that a lot of people had and were talking about and synthesizing them with some of my own ideas, but certainly not every idea in that white paper was wholly original to me. That's not even possible.
Of course not.
And then, and then we brought together a group, and then we got together a bigger group, and it just kept growing. And so everyone really is a founder.
Satoshi's white paper was based on a lot of technology that was already done.
Largely like Nick Szabo stuff, and
Yeah, exactly. So we're all adding to it, and I think
it was revolutionary, though. We can't take away anything that
monetary systems. When the first guy comes up with, "Hey, we can use this gold and we can measure it," and even what Archimedes, which one figured out
lever? Archimedes was the lever and invented the water screw, and
so the idea of putting the gold bar in water and deciding how much it displaces.
Oh yeah, measuring volume by displacement. Yeah. Eureka! I found it.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course the unique weight and all that, and say blah blah blah. All of that comes. If those guys didn't come along, we're not able to do things quite the same. Meanwhile, though, governments and others, bankers, decide, hey, I've got a gold bar. Let me issue a note against it. Oh, why not issue 10 notes against it? Not everybody's going to come collect the bar at the same time. And they monetize.
Now you're talking about GameStop stock and AMC.
Well, is there that much difference between fiat money and GameStop? I don't know. Well, there is.
No, there is. It's backed by the full faith of the U.S. government.
Right. I don't remember when I last had faith in the United States protecting my money, but I can't remember.
I stood up because I thought I had it right by my desk here, and I don't. I have to go look for it. But I used to keep a silver certificate. I found my wife and I were doing the Scholastic book drive at my kid's school a few years ago, and you'd collect everything and count all the money and stuff like that. Oh. And one thing came in. There's a $1 silver certificate, and I said, "Can I buy this can I exchange this for $1 of my own and keep this?" And who cares? And so I kept it.
Also increase your own donation because that's a bargain.
My donation was I bought a lot of books, but we also spent a lot of time.
Okay, great.
We did a lot of volunteering.
Yeah, that's great. I hold it up when I got it as a kid. I don't imagine what they're worth today.
It was in bad shape, and I don't think there's necessarily any numismatic value to it, or not much. But I like it because I will hold it up to I will show people. I'll say, look, this is what it used to say. Nobody understands anymore. This is what money used to say. It didn't say backed by the full faith and credit or anything. It doesn't even say that anymore. Like, we should look at that. Like, it used to say, you can replace this with $1 worth of silver at any Federal Reserve Bank. That's what a silver certificate said.
Right.
Then it said it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. And I thought I was looking for that recently, and now I believe it says legal for all payments.
Right.
Legal tender for all forms of payment. It's slightly different than that.
The government is backing that somebody has to take it as a payment.
They're not even fully backing it anymore. They're just saying you can use it. It's legal to use.
No. The government, i.e. the guns, say that somebody has to take that. but there was a Louisiana law a couple of years ago. I don't know if it stuck or what happened to it, but the proposal was that you couldn't make a cash transaction over a certain amount of money because the cash was being used for drugs, and so you have to take some other form of payment. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, if they're not going to take cash, then there's nothing else left. I know I went, I can't take an Uber with cash wherever I went. Oh, the hotel I stayed at the other day, big sign, there will be no cash in here. Go away, homeless people and robbers. We have nothing to give you. No cash.
You know who uses cash? I'll tell you who uses cash. Legal business that uses cash. The cannabis industry uses cash exclusively. And this is kind of funny. I don't know how this relates exactly to crypto, except that you could be much better to do it on Telos.
My daughter works in the industry, and they're now paying her in direct deposit into a bank account. So they fixed some of it. And there are people working with crypto and other things to be able to make that solution. But yeah, since it's supposedly federally illegal, we got that. I think the trend is away from that, but let's not get off on cannabis.
I'll share a really quick story because it's funny, and that's really all I care about.
That's all we're here for, is just funny stories.
I was in a bank on like a Friday afternoon in Seattle, and in this area of Seattle, Seattle and Denver, or Washington, Denver, and Colorado were the first places to legalize recreational marijuana. So this was a couple years ago. But about a year after that had happened, and there were plenty of dispensaries in this area. And I walk into the bank on a Friday afternoon, and I almost get a contact high. I'm like, "Whoa, what is this? Is this a reggae concert or what's going on here?"
Yeah.
And so I talked to the teller, and they're back there counting huge stacks of money. It's like, I've never seen that in a bank. And they're going, yeah, so all these dispensaries have to be cash-based businesses. And they bring because credit cards won't use them and everything, so they all have an ATM in them. You can use your ATM and take cash out and pay the cash. Super inefficient, right? Then that gets transferred probably by super inefficient armored cars, right? Like that cash. It all smells totally of pot, completely. And the banks are like, we don't even want it. We don't they're like, we're having to stay here for hours, hand counting 20s.
If they're federally chartered, they've got a problem giving.
Oh, they got it. No, they do. They were doing it. They weren't refusing it, but they didn't exactly love it.
Yeah, there was some talk of that too. Like I say, I follow it a bit because of my daughter.
Telos-based payment platform would be incredibly better, because it turns out that cryptocurrency is not a porous paper-like material that absorbs the smell.
There's also somebody said that a huge percentage of $100 bills have cocaine on it.
Have cocaine on it? Yeah, I've heard that. That too.
And so this is the funny thing when they talk about crypto being supporting nefarious activities, and you're like, not as much as cash, because
no, it's always cash.
If it's a crypto transaction, there's some record of it someplace.
There's a total record, unless you're using Monero, or a very, and unless you were using Monero in the last 3 or 4 years, because before that there were some errors and it was totally traceable in ring signatures. So but everything else is a ledger. It's exactly very hard to hide that.
Michael Turpin, I don't know who he was quoting, talked about it, saying that the number of transactions that are of nefarious type has gone down over the years with Bitcoin. Not the same with or crypto, and not the same with cash. Cash is always a certain percentage of that. So it's ridiculous that we're depending.
Well, there'd be no way to track the Monero. So you couldn't really say. I mean, Monero really is impossible to track at this point. So you don't know even how many transactions you're doing, let alone how much.
Actually, the same with cash.
The same as
you
cash.
can't trace where the cash came from unless somebody's recorded the serial number someplace. And so trying to solve those problems by outlawing a type of payment, to me, is just silly. I mean, it's like saying we're going to outlaw anything, sex, drugs, crossing the street, unless the people involved, people want to get from point A to point B, and you tell them not to, they're going to find another way. You blow up the road, they're going to find another way. You build a bridge leading the wrong direction, and they're going to rebuild the bridge. I mean, whatever it takes.
But others are going to follow the rules. There's all kinds of.
Well, the people following the rule, again, the honest people, they suffer because they follow the rule, and they're at a disadvantage with people that don't follow the rule.
I no longer
rules in general do that.
Yeah, I no longer equate an honest person with a person who follows the rules if the rules are dishonest.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That was the old way of thinking was, oh well, if you haven't done anything wrong, why do you care if your privacy is violated or anything? I don't think those two are. I don't think we should equate those two anymore.
Right.
I think
the last year has shown us that what's right or wrong has very little to do with what the rules are or what somebody wants from the top. I know the unintended consequences are just so immense. We've been talking about inflation, which is putting more money into the system. And there's no doubt about it. In the U.S., we have 40% more cash than we did a year ago, or thereabout.
For a time there, it was like 40% of all the money that had ever been printed had been printed within 12 months.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And then they go, oh, but it's not inflation. It's, and it's like...
It's not inflation if the prices don't go up. That's silly. The thing that causes price increases is that plus the velocity.
Well, the only thing keeping the price... Have you seen a tub of Tillamook ice cream lately?
No.
It's like how it's just a very old man kind of thing, but it's like candy bars used to be like this and there'd be a nickel, right? and they don't always change the price. Sometimes they just make them smaller, and all kinds of serving sizes are getting small. I mean, it's a documented thing, but you can also if you go to the grocery store, just go to Kroger's and you'll see it's definitely happening all across.
Yeah, we used to buy a half gallon of ice cream, and I haven't seen a half gallon in a long time.
It's and everything else there, and that's just one way. I mean, the Fed is cooking the books by no longer reporting what the M2 is, right? The money supply. They just stop reporting. That can't possibly be a bad sign.
When I got out of college, I learned to read the Wall Street Journal, and they said I think it's the best thing I ever learned in college. And so I took my student subscription for the next year or two, and then I've had it on and off. And now, current promotions to get $48 a year, and I have the Wall Street Journal on my iPad. I never miss reading at least 5 or 10
Magic.
articles a day. And
they don't have to cut down any trees. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, at any rate.
And you actually get your news. I do that too. And I found that when I would see a Wall Street Journal, it all seemed like news that I had already read a day and a half ago almost.
Right. It is. So yeah, but the thing is, they can now post something in the middle of the day. And I know I read it before I go to bed at night because, by I think 9 p.m. Pacific time, you've got the next day's issue up. And so I always read through it, and boy, a good way to fall asleep.
You're like a time traveler. Oh yeah, that'll put you to sleep.
Exactly, that and whatever's trending on Twitter. But the point being that when I did that back, 40 years ago, every day was talking about the M1. The M2 was invented shortly after that in the 80s. And
the M2 is a way to obfuscate the M1. Right.
So, and I thought, hey, maybe because, I got busy, I owned a business, raising kids, blah, blah, blah. I stopped reading the Wall Street Journal every day. Maybe it was me not paying attention to it. And then recently, in the last few years, I went and looked it up, and the St. Louis Federal Reserve has a lots of good charts. And yeah, okay, great. I can see what's going on. Is it just me that's paying attention? Because this is inflation. And then, of course, a couple of months ago, they even stopped reporting the M2. So now you get an unofficial M2 on the chart. And it's still growing. It's not growing like it did last year, but the other thing is, of course, you need the velocity. If we print $1 trillion and put it into a bank, it doesn't cause prices to inflate. Mm-hmm. But what I learned, we used to play Monopoly with an extra set of money. We got two boards and put the money together. Also, speed Monopoly, you pass out all the deeds at the start of the game. And then it's a game of trading properties.
Just like being born into the real world. All the deeds are already passed out.
Right. And the deeds all have these low numbers on them, but as soon as you have them, as soon as you sell one, the price goes way up. Nobody sells Baltic Avenue for $60. It's going for $600 or whatever the amount of money you have. And so that's always what I think of as how I learned that. Well, what happened last year was they printed this money and it went into banks. Most of the new money is sitting in bank balance sheets. And then what they passed out to people is sitting in their balance sheet.
But nobody wants to hold it as cash because the people who do understand this understand that the inflation is making the cash worth less. Ray Dalio said, I think yesterday, cash is trash. Don't leave your stuff in cash because it's not worth anything. That's a pretty conservative guy to say, hey, at least buy a few Bitcoin. I certainly don't agree with all his comments, but Ray Dalio was very anti-crypto.
You need to pay attention to Ray Dalio, whether you agree with him or not.
Yeah. Well, how would you know if you agree with him or not unless you listen? Right?
Yeah, you certainly don't go by somebody else's headline.
No.
If you don't care what's going on in the world, read the headline. So if you want to know what's going on, you're going to have to do a little bit more reading and find out what's really going on. Because I was just telling somebody, I have been told to take down something once ever, and it was a letter from an attorney, email, and so I won't tell the exact story, but basically, somebody wrote a headline based on them trying to get me to talk about something I had agreed not to talk about. There was celebrity involved, and then they did the headline saying that basically I had taught that person how to blog. It's like, well, that's not at all what it was, because it wasn't a blog. I never met the celebrity, and the discussion was about something entirely different. But because that name was in there, they thought they had a headline. And what's interesting is when the celebrities team wanted it taken down, it was about a half hour after it went up that they went into action. It took them another hour or two to get a hold of me. Yeah. You can find out what's going on. And you're right, it's online, you know what's going on. I certainly am not going to open up the Wall Street Journal, find out the price of Bitcoin. It's too late. And it's not on paper anymore. So, in defense of your stuff that happened yesterday, the Wall Street Journal is a little bit more up to date thanks to electronic stuff. You can't do it. It's the attitude of we're going to try to find out what's really going on. And, if you write 2 pages on something, it won't be that, celebrity was cited going into this restaurant. And here's a picture to making him look bad. And that's what most news gets to, even if it's politics. Biden looks bad. Biden's the savior. Doesn't matter. The real essence of what's happened. So, so what's this new thing?
Let me tell. I want your question, but let me just point out one thing about inflation. Telos has not made a new Telos token in over 2 years, and we're actually talking about dropping it a little bit because it's currently at 355 million and change tokens. And we're talking about dropping it. We're going to vote to take it down to exactly 350 million and try to never have to increase it from there. That's the kind of thing that's the kind of thing that gives money value, right?
Right. It's different. Well, and it doesn't need to be deflationary, but sometimes deflationary is better than inflationary. You want it. You want the whole thing is if you and I want to do business, we shouldn't have to be figuring out exchange rates. And I'll give one more example. In my lifetime, I've seen the Canada dollar worth 60 cents US and all the way up to $1.30 US. Now, I've only been to Canada a couple of times, but best I can tell, nothing's changed between us and Canada. I do like to call them the sneaky foreigners because, you know, they look just like us. But no, really, it's like we are of the same people, basically. And if that's working out, then what about the rest of the world? The yen, the Deutschmark. I used to pay attention a bit to that. The Nigerian money. Everything is like affected by these balance of trade payments and blah, blah, blah. Why can't we have everything worth the same thing? We will be able to. With sort of gold, it's going to be Bitcoin. And then get on with doing the transactions, because the real wealth does not come from me changing the value of the paper I hold in my portfolio. What really is do I get out? Do I do something like we're recording this? This is a more value than most money.
Well, hopefully, let's give the people their money is worth. And in that, and to that point, I will say that my favorite thing about the Canadian dollar is that it's called the loonie.
Yeah,
because it has a loon on it.
There are more honest people up there. That's not why they call it the loonie, but
no, it has a picture of a loon, or had a picture of a loon on it. It's plastic now. Canadian money's made of plastic, isn't it?
I don't know.
And
I don't keep up with
I think it is. I live sort of on the border-ish.
I was at a trade show yesterday, and somebody had $2 bills, real $2 bills, and stamped their logo on them. And they were handing them out, and of course, when you say you'll take one, then they want to scan your badge and email you something. But so they were paying me $2 for my information, and I go, that's cool. I haven't seen her. And he said he watches people all day long pick up this stuff, take a look at it, and then toss it in their trash can. People don't think that the currency is worth anything to that extent.
Wow.
And what are you going to do with a $2 bill? You know, turn it in someplace?
Yeah, you can use it. What are you going to do with a $1 bill?
Yeah.
Not much. You know, the $2 bill.
I have a lifelong habit of picking up pennies. I calculated it out. You're making something like $150,000 a year by the time you pick up a penny.
Really?
And so, if you could do nothing but pick up pennies all day.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. But if you pick up one, you just have a nuisance, as I found out going through TSA last night. But I picked up the penny and recite some mantra that I learned that I don't hardly remember it anymore because it's rare now, is that, I'm thankful on this gift I've received, that sort of thing. Look skyward.
Well, that's a good way to look at everything that happens. Almost everything that happens to you is to be.
You're right. Grateful. The $2, the penny on the floor, and my opportunity to have a conversation with you. It's a gift.
And back
it's
at
wonderful. You. I'm better off. So anyway,
so I feel the same. Hey, let me share something about $2 bills. And $1 coins. So okay. I have a couple because when I was a kid, we would collect them, and we figured out the only place you could get them was the post office, because they would be brought into circulation at the, they come from the mint and nobody wanted them, so they forced all these things on the post office. So if you went to the post office and paid cash and got change for anything, you'd get all these $2 bills, and then later on you'd get the Susan B. Anthony dollars, right? Which then became the
I remember getting the
$2 dollar
post office. I don't remember the Susan Anthony. I never got used to the Susan B. Anthony because it was if I had one in my pocket, there was a 50-50 chance I'd spend it at the quarter.
Yeah, it was a bad physical design for sure. It was Susan B. Anthony, by the way, is a fantastic person. And the thing that you're talking about before about why don't we all just have a single currency? Well, I'd say the euro has actually shown, I think, why that's probably not a good idea. A couple of years ago, when there were problems with Germany and Portugal and Italy and Greece and Greece and Ireland, and I think Ireland were the worst. But there were a lot, that discrepancy between countries having different economic units. But then why don't in the United States, why don't different states have different economic units?
Well, basically because we have laws saying it's illegal to do that. If we didn't have laws, there would be. Money is, again, read the Bitcoin standard, because you'll find out that plenty of people have created currencies before. It's not like the idea of the fiat money. And again, what we're doing now is 50 years old. Most people never lived when it was another way. And I was a kid, I didn't know the difference when they got rid of the gold standard. I mean, what was that? It was 13, 14, something like that.
There's a long history of alternate forms of money. I mean, companies used to have scrip, right? They call it scrip, and it's basically you work for a company and they pay you in their own company dollars. I mean, it was a way it was kind of a way. Anytime somebody forces you to use their money, they are they are putting power over you. Right, I sold my soul to the company store. They're caught right in that.
I wonder why governments make money then.
Exactly. Well, you are so sharp, Warren. Yes, that's what I was leading up to. So anytime they tell you what kind of money you can use, that is a power play.
We could talk about this all day, but there's an acronym you want to introduce me to.
Telos EVM for sure.
The EVM. Okay, so tell us what the EVM is and why we should care.
Sure. An EVM stands for Ethereum Virtual Machine, and the Ethereum blockchain itself is an EVM. So are things like Binance Smart Chain and Polygon and number of these things. It's basically a layer one blockchain that can run Solidity smart contracts. And the value of that is there's a lot of really built-in great infrastructure. All these DeFi platforms and a lot of other things, NFTs, and all these things are already programmed in Solidity. And even though Solidity on its own is not the most efficient language, the fact that there's such a great big code base that you can just instantly apply on any of these chains is. It's very successful, and it's a victim of its own success because transaction fees are really high, but it has some shortcomings, right? We see that the transaction fees are high. There's front running, if you don't know, or also called MEV, which is basically a way that the miners or other bots on the chain can steal value from any large transactions. That's a big problem, and of course it's hitting capacity. So Telos EVM, like other EVMs, is able to run Solidity smart contracts totally the same as Ethereum or anything else, with a couple of differences. Because most things are actually built, most EVMs, almost all of them in fact, are built as simple forks of the Ethereum code, the Go Ethereum, also called Geth code, that with a few modifications, they all inherit the same shortcomings. With Telos, we built our own Ethereum implementation, EVM implementation in C++ in the Go language, and we deployed it as a smart contract essentially on Telos. Telos is actually so powerful that a smart contract on Telos can emulate the entire Ethereum blockchain, which is kind of cool if you think about it. It's very Inception. But so here's the thing: we don't have those shortcomings. For one, it's about the only one. It's the only one I know of that actually eliminates front running. So right off the bat, you eliminate the ability for people to steal from your DeFi transactions, which is on Ethereum alone been $750 million of theft just since January 1st, 2020. So these are not small numbers. These people worry about rug pulls and tax and stuff like that. Through front running, they're probably losing more money than they are from any of those things. So unless you happen to have all your money in one and they get rugs pulls and something like that. But overall, front running is a much bigger problem. Nobody talks about it because nobody has a solution except Telos. And the solution works both on Telos native DeFi and Telos EVM, but we think that EVM is going to be much larger in the immediate term when we launch this. We're also much faster. We're 30 times faster than Ethereum, half-second block times versus 15 seconds. I believe the Binance Smart Chain is 3 seconds, or like 6 times faster. We're on our current version, we're 1/10 the price of transactions on Binance Smart Chain, and we're, depending on what the prices are, we're close to 1,000 times less than on Ethereum, depending on what the variable price is. Our gas price is fixed. It's not variable. That's one of the ways that we stop front running. You can't pay more and jump ahead. Everything's processed first in, first out. Our capacity is huge. It's 100 times bigger, and so and just to give you an example, so we're seeing right now a lot of things like Solana has come out and froze the other day. And Cardano, launched its DeFi demo about a couple of days after we launched our DeFi demo, and theirs froze up. You couldn't use it. People have made videos about nothing was usable on Cardano, and nothing could be stopped on Telos. And you could go right now to demo.telos.finance, and use this demo, and it's fast. I could show you on this live stream if you want, but it's so fast and the cost is so low. It completely changes. It's just like the wind. It's just like, but you're still using MetaMask. You're still using the tools, so you don't have to go and learn a new set of tools. Telos has great wallets, and people who are used to using Ethereum and have forgot the initial pain of learning how to use MetaMask and all that, think it's harder because it's different. But once you get used to it, it's actually much easier. The problem is just a new set of tools to use. But now you can use MetaMask on Telos. We're totally dedicated to being be a great UX blockchain. I want Telos to be the blockchain that your grandma uses. Maybe not your grandma, Warren, but it's just so easy that anyone can use it. So that's exciting. We've had Telos EVM has been on our testnet in various incarnations for several months. Our audit, we've done a very thorough audit. Not just people talk about code, and often blockchain code isn't even audited. But my problem is often it is audited, but the audit is more of sort of a rubber stamp process where they have a list of known exploits that have happened before, and they look for them, and if they don't find it, they go, it's fine, it's audited. If they do, they go, hey, we found this. But what they don't do is the kind of testing that we decided was absolutely imperative to do. So in our audit, we hired a company called Sentinel, and we hired them not only to do the audit, and to work with us on solutions. There's actually sort of a give and take thing. It's like you could do it like this and make some changes and update it, as opposed to just getting a report. But they also did a kind of automated testing that's called fuzzing, and they tested. And what they were looking for was putting like a massive amount of different kinds of transactions through our EVM and through the Go Ethereum, which is the main implementation called Geth, and seeing if there's any differences. And we were basically just looking to see if ours was 100% parity with Ethereum. In that process, we discovered, our auditors discovered that there was a difference. And when we looked into what the difference was, it's because there was an error that people hadn't found in months and months, maybe years, in Go Ethereum. That was a bug. And that was the bug that was recently given a hot patch, and actually caused caused some problems while the hot patch was being adopted. We found that our auditor, Telos' auditor, found that we care about testing. We're not putting something out. My big beef with Cardano is they're like, oh, we're gonna, we've done peer review for years, and I'm like, peer review, that's not how you do software. You do software by testing, right? And it's just a weird process.
By committee.
Well, you sometimes do that, but what you need to do is test it, because you can't just read and write papers and have academics say, yeah, that should work. You gotta get your hands dirty and test it out and do what we did. So these are two totally different approaches, and their approach leads to they launch stuff and it doesn't work, and our approach leads to we haven't even launched it yet and we're already finding important high value bugs in and contributing to the whole EVM and Ethereum ecosystem. Even though we're coming into it, and Telos EVM is going to come into it and be a competitor on some level, it's also a contributor, right? As many of these chains are, and I think that it's we can solve a lot of problems.
Any good if there's bugs out there and people lose money off, that's not helping anybody.
Yeah, that doesn't help. That doesn't help the users. Yeah. Right. And the users are using all of ours, right? The users. We don't want the users who are using Ethereum and Matic and these things to have. We're not like, oh no, they're not Telos users. We want everybody to do well.
Competitor.
Yeah, it's a black. Okay. These things are a black eye to the whole crypto industry. I wish everyone had the same.
That's fantastic. Let's get a little farther out. Where are we in a couple of years, 5 years? I'm not too worried about the date, but in the future, are we going to shut down Wall Street? What's going to happen? Or how is it going to
we as a society, or we as Telos, or we as a society with Telos as part of it?
Well, of course, Telos is controlling the future, but aside from that, where do you see us in a few years? And how will this benefit mankind?
Okay, well, I mean, we're already benefiting mankind, and those projects will keep going, and I'd love to share those. And they're not strictly financial, although there's a financial component to almost everything that humans do, and so there are to those as well. So I don't see this as a competitive thing. I mean, on some levels, like there are many things that are out there that just don't have any use and are not going to be around in a couple years. Just as there are things that people were excited about 2 years ago that aren't around anymore in crypto. And that's. But I think what we are going to see very soon is something that I think people will call the mesh. The same way we call the World Wide Web the web, they're going to call the block mesh the mesh. And a block mesh is a group of interconnected blockchains, right? That are woven tightly together by bridging across each other and using the strengths of one to help the weaknesses of another, and vice versa, to build a seamless internet, Web 3.0 internet, where users don't spend much time worrying about the underlying stuff. The same way that we don't spend time worrying about HTTP or World Wide Web or any of those things. We're just, right now, what streaming format are we using on this live stream and stuff like that? We're not thinking about that. No one watching is thinking about it. We're just doing it, right? And there's a lot of protocols. There's RTMP working with HTTP, working with a lot, stuff no one wants to hear about, right? But they're all working together. And the outcome is I can be here, outside Seattle. You can be there in with the Brooklyn Bridge behind you in Los Angeles, and
the Brooklyn Bridge at the New York in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kidding.
That's quite a river.
I didn't even know where this was. I really like this background.
I could be wrong. It looks like that. Anyway, and we're doing this seamless thing over Zoom that then broadcasts to YouTube, and we're not thinking about any of these things. We're just like, oh, this is the button I push, and why is it so complicated?
Oh yeah, it used to be you had to have the right codec installed on your computer to watch the video, and
so it just goes. It advances.
Yeah,
right, and so that's what
decided not to watch the video because it was so hard. And you had to download the video and then watch it, and those types of things. And smartphones revolutionized our life. I see the next 10 years has got to be that fast of change. rapid, I guess you would say, rapid change.
Yeah.
And what?
So
Yeah,
so
I envision that the world could function without Wall Street. And to
oh,
me, that's
I think it could. I don't know if it will. So,
yeah,
and especially not in the
I
2 year
totally
thing.
agree with that.
So, but Wall Street may be different. But I would say, big picture, I see this mesh, this block mesh, that's very much like all the worldwide, all these tools we're using, and don't think about it. That's my first big prediction that that we're increasingly moving towards that in 3 years or whatever from now. It will be. That's how people will think about it, and they'll and most people won't think about whether they're using Telos or
when I have a good idea to build something, and finance is one of the components, as you say, it affects everything. I want to do something, make the world a better place, however. And I can find like-minded people to support that, including the money and the labor and and sharing of building on the ideas. If that becomes more closer to instantaneous, then it's okay. There is still a reputation. If I come up with an idea to change the world and get my $10,000 seed money to start off, just very little stuff, and I do that every day, well, pretty soon somebody's going to stop that. You're going to have a reputation ranking. It's going to stop me from.
Well, if you don't deliver on anything, that's like an identity thing. And
if you don't deliver on it, then getting the help so that you can deliver will be delivered in the same way. It's not just a matter of you'll have a credit rating and you're screwed. You'll have a lot more options. And
we're working. Tell us, we're doing a blockchain-based identity system that's on our roadmap. We're working on this, and we're working with the people, part of the team. This is I haven't told people this, but we're working with the part of the team that's responsible for.
Today.
Yeah, not really announced. Allegedly, we're working with people on. Allegedly, we're working with people on behind the. Yeah. Behind the Estonian, the Estonian national ID system, and we're Telos ID, which is extremely successful, but only for Estonia, right? And we can make this. We're working with them. I'm very excited the work we're doing with them right now. As consultants. We can't really announce anything about it truly, except that it's inspired by, and some of the people on our team are participants in that. We're participants in that, and so we're building. So Telos identity will be something just like you said, where you can have control of your own identity, but you can also prove that you're you and not just somebody who grabbed your JPEG picture off LinkedIn.
And to me, it's okay if it's me with all my warts, because I think somebody would want to invest in me. Even if they found out I failed at 16 ventures.
Well, then if you use the Telos, who hasn't failed, right? I mean, that's like every great entrepreneur has, and everyone you've never heard of has too. So, the great entrepreneurs probably failed more times than the people you never heard of, because they failed once or twice and stopped, and the entrepreneurs failed several times and kept going until they had a success, right?
Well, and I dare say
true.
Some of the best people, best ideas and capabilities just aren't good at the money part of it or whatever. And of course, if you hand a guy $100,000, you hand a guy $50,000, million, doesn't matter how much. You keep handing out the money. At some point, you got to say stop. But there's other alternatives. It's like, it's not the money. You want to work on this. Hey, come on over here. We're building the next Telos. Come on, join the team. Put your labor in. You'll get paid for it, whatever. You'll get a piece of the ownership, because that'll all be different. But under SEC rules, we're limited to what we can do. I mean,
it's so ridiculous. Yeah, because I'll give you an example. So Telos. We started off building a governance system for our own chain. It had been promised in the EOS white paper, but Block One never delivered it. So that's actually how we got started. The first 6 months that we were building Telos, we were building that. And that was good. And we made some, your normal, we had a 1.0 system, and then we got kind of a 1.2 system. And then that was actually built in my company, GoodBlock. And so we had been building this, and I said, hey, what would be amazing is every dApp in the world, or at least on our chain, needs access to this exact same thing. And instead of recreating our efforts on the chain and building this themselves, where there could be mistakes or whatever, we could rewrite. We could do a lot of work and rewrite the system we made to work the same, but be accessible to anyone on the Telos chain. And that is what we did. We're still the only ones who've ever done that in blockchain, to my knowledge. And it's called Telos Decide. And so you can easily, so if you're starting that company, right, and you want to raise that money, right, you don't necessarily have to have all that much trust, because you can issue that as a Telos Decide type token, and you can give people total. Let people totally use our system to have complete control of their voting, so they don't have to worry about you.
Right.
You can't rug pull. You could have it set up so they could get revenues, as the project makes money, those could flow to them. All that is technologically possible and very easy. But if you live in the United States, and all that is awesome, that's exactly how things should work. That's so much better. Oh my gosh, this is a company, and I believe in it, and I contributed to it, whether in the beginning or later.
Describe the security.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is I'm voting, like anyone can get involved, and I can vote on it, and my vote is functional and transparent and matters and decides what goes forward. And as it benefits, I benefit. That's great. Yeah, but the U.S. goes, oh, that's a security. You can't do that. And so no U.S. company can do that, even though it's greatly different.
Yeah, and it's not like they don't realize it, because Congress passed what was that? The jobs. The names never match up. The initials spell out jobs. The act that says that anybody can invest, but it's not like, I live in a town where you can decide to take your last $10 and go put it on red on a roulette wheel. I think $10 you can still do a $10 bet. But anyway, you can bet your family fortune on red, and you're either going to make it larger or go home broke. And there is no government agency regulating. There's a lot of regulation in gambling, but there's no government agency.
No one protecting you from
I take
from
my
yourself.
stack of money and put it on a roulette table, that they have to give it back because, I meant well. So it's
and they don't have to. You don't have to provide a credit report before you place your bet. Well, can you really afford this if you do make this bet? Or you get,
and truly, if there was an easy way for them to know that somebody was putting their last dollar on a bet, it would be very nice if that lit up something and a counselor came in or whatever, right? But that would be good for society. As a government move, I'm totally against it. And yet, if my friend opens up a sandwich shop and I want to hand him $5,000 for 50% ownership, I've got a problem. And it's now a security. I think that particular transaction would be okay, but
that would probably be okay. But
you pay somebody $1,000 an hour to tell you if that's okay.
If you heard about a great idea and you thought it was worth putting $1,000 or $100 or $5 into with a bunch of other people, then that's not allowed in the America. And the American SEC, for whatever reason, whatever bullshit reason they think this is true, they're the world police. It's like Team America World Police. You can't do that here, so we're basically going to effectively make it impossible to do that anywhere, and we're gonna look for one American did this. You guys, we can shut you down forever. It's ridiculous.
There's no way either of us are on their side. To take their side for a brief second, it does make some sense that they're out there trying to keep people from getting swindled, or somebody to come up with a bogus investment vehicle where you. If
that was what they were doing, it would make total sense. If that was what they were actually doing, that would make sense. But we can see many, somehow Lehman Brothers crashed, and somehow, somehow Enron, like,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, that's
Well,
not, they're not
and
doing that. Maybe their state admission, but that's not what they're actually
the
spending
one
their
that's
time on.
always bothered me is the 2008 crash. It could be because I lost the portrait. But but what bothered me about that was that no one of any importance in Wall Street went to jail over that.
One guy was scapegoat.
One
It's
guy, and he was a
ridiculous.
traitor. He wasn't the
Yeah,
manager.
no CEO.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And when there are bailouts, it's not that like what we had. There was the TARP. We had the big bailout,
Hmm.
and people got bonuses. Okay, if you're paying a guy 50 million a year, and you think he's the guy that's going to save you, and he's entitled to an annual bonus on whatever his contract terms are, it's not about whether or not he gets that bonus. I got to ask whether or not the guy deserves to be employed. That's a different story. But to think that we're funding those bonuses, and then the government has, the government has to force
There
some of the
could
banks
they
to participate.
here's how that's a great example, Warren, because here's how and this goes back to my thing I was saying, like, I don't know if Wall Street's going to be gone, right?
Right.
Because they're like this, right, with the people who are making the rules, and so no matter
They
how
are the
efficient
people making the rules. Yeah.
and they are the people making the rules, and they're the people with the money. So you look at that, and you look. I did this, and then I forgot what I was going to say, and it was so good.
It was such a beautiful metaphor, though.
That was good. It's totally worth it. That's so much better. They're hooked up with the people who have the money, right? So
Right.
the SEC. So if the government and the SEC, and it was bigger than just the SEC. It was the whole government, everybody, Congress and everybody. But if they had actually cared, they could have simply said, "You got anyone who gets a bailout, every C-level employee works there for what your salary is $1 a year until whatever you can take. We're not telling you what you do, but if you want these funds, you have to have some kind of reasonable limit on what the CEOs make, what they're getting as bonuses.
Right.
The
And if you
CEOs
want to
shouldn't be
say no,
entitled to
you
a
can say
bonus."
no.
Right.
Some
Yeah,
of them
if
would.
the CEO, if the company does well, and it only does well because they completely fucked up and lost all their money and crashed the industry, and then the government came in and gave them money, then the CEO, it's not because the CEO worked hard and did a great job. It's because
Exactly.
the government gave them a bunch of money.
We're
So
not even
had
close
they
to that
put
reality.
restrictions on that, if they had
Because
put
it's so-
restrictions on that, they
Yeah.
would say, then you would know. Then you would know that they care about the American people or the people of the world or whatever, like, and they'd say, okay, we're just fixing this, but you can't line your pockets. But they didn't stop. They could have easily done that, and they didn't. So that's if you ever want like an acid test of or a litmus test of whether or not they're working for the people or the banks, because sometimes it can be hard to suss that out. That's all you need to look at.
Yep, exactly. Now, of course, they say that they need the expertise at some level to do those kind of things, and they also force some of the big banks to participate. There were banks that didn't need it, so they had to take the money and then pay it back.
They forced banks to take money. That they
Well,
twisted their arm and
Well,
Come
no,
on, I mean-
because of the few restrictions that were on there. There are a few people out there that were saying, we don't want the money and we want to make the rules. If it had been, you need to reduce the salary of the CEO to $1, then maybe they leave. So what? Maybe some of them go out of business. I don't think that letting them crash would have killed everything. Might have been a good thing. Another monopoly example for you. If we're playing Monopoly and the dog knocks over the board, mom says you got to quit playing, whatever the reason, we're going to go back and play again. We're going to set up the board again. But I know that if you're winning and I'm losing, I want some outcome that we end this game and start over. But I don't want it to be my fault. I want,
Right. Whereas if you were just about to win, if you were just about to win because you had all the money, you're not going to go, okay, let's just start a new game. You're like, I was going to win.
Leave all the money right where it is, and we'll go to dinner and come back and pick up the game. The winner wants that. But end of the day, we're going to be playing another game. And when you don't is when you start getting things like, I'm losing, I'm knocking over the board. You don't want to play with that kind of game. And so, and I think we're in the situation where some of the rules have just made it like, it's not a fun game to play. Let me try something else. We know that taxation at a certain point causes people not to work for more money. They find other ways to spend their time.
Well, why are we playing this game and I always lose and you always win? Why are we playing Monopoly where you already started out owning all the properties and I didn't own any? Like, I don't like that set of rules. Let's adjust the set of rules so that we can, so I have at least a chance to thrive.
And I think that's what led both of us into the places we are where we're even having this discussion, because if working for somebody or working within the system worked, we wouldn't be here. We're trying to invent something better. I know, there's plenty to do in life. It's interesting how many people, including me from time to time, think, boy, everything would be okay if I just had more money. That's not true. You're still going to have your problems. And so money is one way to do it. What I like about Telos and your attitude and a lot of the crypto attitude right now and just tech in general is there's a solution. Let's engineer it. Let's figure it out. Make things faster. And at a higher velocity, cut out the friction. And other than the fact that all this inflated fiat is going to make prices go up like crazy when it would get rid of some of the restrictions. So anyway, and don't get me started on the restrictions, or that's a whole nother show to talk about the world. But anyway, it's been great talking to you. I'm going to officially say goodbye and maybe come back and say goodbye to you offline, but we're gone. That's the end of the show.
Thank you.